What is a completely random fact? When a Viking received a gut wound, they would be fed strong onion soup. After some time, someone would smell the wounds elsewhere on their body. If they smelled like onions, there was damage to the intestines and no chance of saving them. This is pretty ingenious, to be honest. It's safe and effective. Also, the understanding of human anatomy was pretty decent too. Penguins have an organ above their eye that converts salt water to fresh water. Ladies and gentlemen, we have solved the freshwater crisis. Squid brains are donut-shaped, and their esophagus runs through it. If a squid eats something too big, it can get brain damage. I would be a real dumb squid. Ants have a terminal velocity of 1.778 meters per second. This means they can fall from any height and not harm themselves. No fall damage? That's so unfair. Humans have 100 times fall damage of ants, but also 100 times strength and speed. Gary Newman is 13 days older than Gary Oldman. Wonder if Newman knows Oldman. Hope not. Together they'd be Gary Mean Man. At one point in time, all the details of the Manhattan Project were in 3 safes, each locked with code 271828. Mathematicians would of course recognize these numbers as the Euler number, 2.71828, a number that has wide importance in calculus. Physicist Richard Feynman was able to crack into these safes after snooping around the secretary's desk and finding the number pi 3.14159. After thinking, why would a secretary need to know the value of pi? He deduced it was probably a code, so he tried it on the safes. After they didn't work, he tried other numbers that mathematicians and physicists would use, and sure enough, it worked. After he got into the safes, he thought to pull a prank on the director by leaving little notes in the safe to scare the director into thinking that a spy had gotten in. 10 to 20% of US power outages are caused by squirrels. I believe it. At my old apartment, the power went out 3 times in the span of 3 months, and all 3 times the power company said it was a squirrel in the pole transformer. Apparently, no one there does trend analysis as part of their job, but when I called to complain after the 3rd one, it finally clicked and they dispatched a crew to install a guard. I lived there 3 or 4 years after that and had the power go out once. Muppet singing Bohemian Rhapsody is the first ever video on YouTube with 1080p quality. This is important, and I hope my kids will read about it in textbooks. The original Mr. Potato Head toy did not come with what we now consider the body. It was a set of parts with pins that children could stab into real potatoes. Yep, they probably got a lot of complaints from parents about rotting potatoes forgotten somewhere in the house. The unicorn is the national animal of Scotland. I'm Scottish, can confirm. 50% of the world's pigs live in China. China just lost 1/3 of their pigs due to an epidemic, unrelated to COVID. So I guess that's not true anymore. When roosters make their sound, their ears close up so they won't become deaf. It's illegal to own just one guinea pig in Switzerland because they get lonely. I like this. I've heard that guinea pigs can die from loneliness. Crows hold grudges. Once they identified the suspect in question, they would threaten them by diving down and swarming the person that they had felt threatened by years before. I've heard really cool things about crows. One crow that was harassed by a specific person will convince lots of crows to attack that same person if they are seen later. The oldest "your mom" joke was discovered on a 3,500-year-old tablet in Babylon. The ancestors of modern horses evolved in the Americas, then migrated to Asia and died in the Americas due to an unsuitable climate. Thousands of years later, escaped Spanish colonial horses would repopulate the American plains with modern horses, who could now enjoy the perfect environment that their ancestors first evolved in all those years ago. Interesting. I wonder why so many people are concerned with wild horses being invasive and ruining things. From what I've heard around Alberta anyway, it's because farmers want to use the crown land for free grazing for their cattle and don't want the competition. There may be other concerns as well, but I haven't heard any compelling arguments. The thigh bone of human is stronger than concrete. Concrete is rather fragile, especially if it's as thin as a pelvis. Concrete strength comes from the thickness and is almost always reinforced with steel rubber. Incubators for premature babies were a sideshow attraction for many decades. They were called infantoriums. The word alone is so 19th century, I became a barber surgeon. The tallest building in the state of Wyoming is a college dorm. Why build up when you can just build out? I miss living in Wyoming. There was practically no one around. It was great. More fun facts. There are 2 sets of escalators in Wyoming, more cows than people, and the population density is 6 people per square mile. Each pineapple takes 1.5 to 3 years to grow. They really grow out of each other too. I thought that was just a wallpaper pattern until I went to Hawaii and visited a plantation. You can grow a new one out of the top of the one you're eating if you keep enough of it intact. Also, it's one of only 2 members of the bromulade family that are edible. The other is not commercially viable for crops. The world's longest hiccup was about 8 years. Just think how hard it would be to get in a relationship. I'm sitting here imagining some guy making a hiccup sound, but the sound never stops and he's just spending 8 years screeching at everyone. If you're 25 years old, approximately 1/3 of the world's population were alive when you were born, have died since. If you're older than 30, you're older than half the people currently living. Thanks. I wasn't feeling old before, but I am now. When a pregnant woman gets injured, the fetus will send stem cells to the site of the injury to help repair it. My first pregnancy, I'd had cancer and refused treatment. They called it a miracle because I had none after I delivered. My second child helped me cure a tumor I had. I'm now 8 years later and still have not had any issues. My OB couldn't explain either, and I'm good with the outcome. Twinkies are 68% air, therefore making it totally possible to fit 2 Twinkies into the space taken up by only 1. IDK, if my Twinkie maths is right, but that would mean it's only 30% Twinkie, and you could fit 3 Twinkies inside of a space meant for 1, right? The world's largest purchaser of explosive is the US government. The world's second largest producer of explosive is Disney. So that's how Disney controls all the other companies. If you open your eyes in pitch black room, the color you'll see is called Eigengrau. Eigengrau is a German term which literally means its own grey or intrinsic grey. Ants were actually one of the first species to develop agriculture in the form of growing different types of fungus. Ants are insane, man. It really shows how strength in numbers is way more important than individual intelligence. The last living member of a species is called an ending. Well, I found the cool new term that everyone got from a YI dystopian novel and started using ironically, but can't stop, and now it's just part of the lexicon. Barack Obama was the first president to own a BlackBerry. There are no cats in the Bible. What? Dogs? There were dogs, but they weren't pets. They were wild. A second is called a second because it is the second division of the hour by 60, and the first division being a minute. Why is a minute not called a first? A minute was called a prime minute, i.e. first minute, and a second was called a second minute. It snows metal on Venus. The most effective hunter is the dragonfly, a 95% success rate. This is because its optic nerve connects directly to its wings. Sounds from far away seem louder when it's going to rain. This is because the water in the air conducts sound. It also rains sulfuric acid on Venus, but the surface is so hot that it evaporates before it even touches the ground. It's theorized that Venus could have, or at some point had, seas of sulfuric carbon dioxide, and quite ironically, at around 50 kilometers above Venus's surface is home to one of the most Earth-like conditions in the solar system. At this altitude, the pressure is around 1 atm, and the temperatures are in the range of 0 to 5 Celsius. Granted, there's still that little issue of the cloud being made of sulfuric acid, but otherwise it one day could a likely candidate for colonization. Venus is a weird place.